Hello there. Welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic. Today, I'll be discussing the upcoming Old Republic Omnibus. Spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films, TV shows, and all other media. This is where the fun begins. All right, sorry for the delay. I went out of town away from my equipment and I had some technical difficulties, but now I'm back with my equipment and now we have this episode and there will be plenty of great episodes coming your way in the future, so don't worry about that. So here's the new episode today. And as a reminder, our next episode will be with Silver from Star Wars Thrifting. And that one will be released on February 7th for Star Wars Podcast Day. More information can be found at hashtag Star Wars Podcast Day and hashtag SWPD 2021. And then on February 19th, the episode I recorded with Plo Kool on the return of the hero's journey will be live. So there's great episodes. And before we dive into discussing the Star Wars Legends, the Old Republic Omnibus, I just wanted to mention Patreon. So today, January 31st, our Patreon is live. So yeah, it's live today. I'm very excited. And if you want to find our Patreon page, the link is in our Instagram bio, and you can find it at www.patreon.com/Ebon Hawk Podcast. So I'm very excited about it. We have all these different tiers, and if you want to support our show in any way, anything, we're always grateful. And if you want to share it, anything helps. We're always incredibly grateful to our listeners and our audience. So without any further ado, let's dive into the omnibus. All right, so there was an article on CBR.com. It came out December 24th, 2020, and it's discussing the release of the Star Wars Legends, the Old Republic Omnibus. It's going to be released by Marvel July 2021. It says an omnibus collection featuring the entirety of Dark Horse Comics' Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic arc goes on sale from Marvel Comics in July. Marvel Comics has officially announced Star Wars Legends, the Old Republic Omnibus, a new Star Wars Omnibus edition collecting the entirety of Dark Horse Comics' Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic arc. It'll be called Star Wars Legends with the kind of gold stripe on the cover. The Old Republic Omnibus, as I said, will go on sale July 7th, 2021, and the retailing will be $125 US dollars, and it's going to be a massive book. It's going to be 1,344 pages, and the book consists of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1 through 50, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic War 1 through 5, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Handbook, and material from the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Rebellion Issue 0. And 2 covers will be available for the omnibus. One will feature the art by Dustin Weaver, originally from Knights of the Old Republic Handbook, and another featuring art by Brian Ching, originally from Knights of the Old Republic number 31. Even though it's released by Marvel, these comics were published at the time by Dark Horse Comics, and of course when Disney bought the rights to Star Wars, it merged to Marvel because, Disney owns Marvel as well. The article says all the aforementioned comics were originally published by Dark Horse Comics during the Oregon-based publisher's time holding the Star Wars license. The publishing rights now reside with Marvel, with them having reacquired the license from Dark Horse in 2015. Marvel was the original house for Star Wars comics kind of back in the days of like 77, 78, but Dark Horse picked up the license in the early 90s. Knights of the Old Republic, the comic series, as well as other Dark Horse era Star Wars comics, have since been re-released by Marvel on digital platforms like Comixology. This was cool news for me. I'm really going to have to try to get a review copy because $125 is like, ooh, like kind of hard. But I mean, if anyone's going to get a review copy, in my humble opinion, I think it should be, like this podcast, because who else podcasts about Knights of the Old Republic every week? And I love reading. And yeah, so if anyone knows where to get this book, get a review copy, maybe I'll hit up NetGalley or something. But yeah, I will promote the heck out of this comic book omnibus. I was always a massive Star Wars fan and a massive Knights of the Old Republic fan. I remember when this comic book series was announced and we saw the cover for, I think, was it issue 0 or issue 1? But it had Zane Carrick on the cover with a yellow lightsaber, Jaril. Maybe I'm pronouncing that name wrong, and everyone was speculating, like, is that girl Bastila? It kind of looks like a double-bladed lightsaber, and then it's like, yes, it is a woman, but, like, it's a completely different person and species from Bastila. And we're like, oh, yeah, who knew? It's funny, because everyone thought Zane Carrick was going to be Revan, because he had, like, kind of the shoulder-length brown hair that I guess the canonical Revan has, even though I pretend that doesn't exist because I hate that face. Yeah, I remember the anticipation of it coming out, and then me hitching a ride to Borders when the bookstore chain still existed, and I remember, like, I was like, okay, so the comic's out. I have to track it down, like, apps didn't really exist, like, comics weren't really released online at that time, and so I went to Borders and, like, okay, I'm gonna have to find the comic book section and buy this Star Wars comic. I don't know, back in the day, like, girls liking Star Wars, like, sometimes people would kind of give you a hard time, so I bought the comic. I got the first few issues, but the hard thing is sometimes, like, all the issues wouldn't, like, be released, like, in the store each month because maybe they're like, oh, it hasn't sold all the copies, so we need to wait, and then they would kind of skip an issue, and then, like, sometimes it's just hard to track and, like, hard to just, like, keep going to Borders, and, like, like, I'm a student, so, like, sometimes it just, like, it was money I didn't have, so I kind of wasn't able to read all of the entries, obviously, but I definitely kept up with the story arcs, and I thought it developed the KOTOR era well, and it was kind of fun to just kind of see some of the different characters from KOTOR and see the new characters and kind of get the lead up to the Mandalorian Wars in, I guess, the then canon. So that was cool. But yeah, in this podcast, we've been recapping Knights of the Old Republic 1, and we plan to recap Knights of the Old Republic 2, but we're definitely thinking of diving into the comics in the future, and this will give us a good initiative to dive into it. Let's just take a quick break, and I'll discuss, like, what this could possibly mean for KOTOR in 2021. Yeah, so there have been a lot of rumors of a KOTOR game. I mean, I think we covered some of those rumors in episode 14, and it could very well end up coming true, because Lucasfilm Games, that new kind of imprint for Lucasfilm, was just kind of created, and there's definitely different projects happening from different studios. It's not just EA and BioWare anymore. So I'm like, maybe there could be a KOTOR game, but I don't know. I kind of hope not. I'm not so much a gamer anymore because I'm just always kind of busy, doing things. And sometimes it's hard just to be like, oh, I need to plug in my PS4 and let it install. And, oh, wow, this game is like how long, And I don't know. I'm just kind of a busy adult. So, like, sometimes it's just hard to play games, and I kind of like being outdoors and reading, and sometimes just like video games get in the way of that. So personally, I would prefer the future of KOTOR, if it is embraced by Disney, to be a movie rather than a game, because I don't know, like some modern game studios, like the modern video game scene, I'm not as interested in, because it seems like a lot of games can like have issues on launch. They cost too much. There's DLC issues, all that, And I feel like Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, it's already been a game. So unless like it's Knights of the Old Republic 3, I'm not interested in it. And like if they're trying to remake it, I think it wouldn't be as good, because I feel like they would try to cram too much in one game and maybe not focus on a good story. Maybe be like, here's the Mandalorian Wars, here's KOTOR 1 and 2, all in one game, because we want to release Funko Pops and give you Revan, who looks like Keanu Reeves. So, like, I wouldn't be as interested in that. If there is a game and it's Knights of the Old Republic 3, I'm more okay with that. But if it's a reinterpretation, I'm not as interested. If they did a remaster, I'm okay with that. But yeah, there's definitely been rumors of a Knights of the Old Republic game. They could just be rumors, who knows? But there has definitely been a KOTOR resurgence. I mean, we've covered in the podcast some different toys, lightsabers, Funko Pops, and the mobile ports for Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. And now we have a comic omnibus, so I'm kind of like, what does this all mean, I don't know. But it seemed like in the past, like, Disney would kind of just forget, like, past iterations of things, like, kind of just kind of focus on, like, the new canon, kind of push Legends a bit to the side, and just kind of focus on, like, what they were creating. But now maybe things have changed. Maybe Disney's turning a corner. I don't know, like, maybe they're just releasing it because it's like, who else is going to release it? But I don't know, I kind of have to think, like, KOTOR has a future in some capacity. I think it should. It has a great story. It's a great way to kind of build the Star Wars timeline. Who knows what the omnibus means? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But before I close, I just wanted to make a plug for our Apple Podcast reviews. If you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, we read them in our episode, and we name you by name, and we read the review, and we're very grateful for you. And reviews and subscriptions and sharing the podcast really helps us reach more people, and we're always indebted to our listeners when they do that. So, yeah, may the Force be with you, and I'll close out. And you can find us on Instagram at Ebonhawk Podcast, and the Ebonhawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor Podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out immensely. And Coden can be found on twitch.tv/CodenBon, and he typically streams Thursday evening, 6 to 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And he can be found on Instagram at CodenBon. And our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Schurman at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/AlistairSounds. And in case you're keeping up with the Inspired a Galaxy podcast, I've been working with Alistair to create some fun intro music for that podcast. So I'm always a big fan of Alistair's work, and he is open for commissions. So, yeah. And then our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com. This has been the Ebon Hawk Podcast. May the Force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.